Imagine this: a crowded event, flashing lights, cameras rolling, and then chaos. A single gunshot shatters the moment. Charlie Kirk collapses. Within minutes, headlines across the nation scream the same story. A rooftop sniper, a high-powered rifle, a political assassination in broad daylight. That's the narrative millions have heard. According to prosecutors, the man behind it was Tyler Robinson, arrested and charged with murder. They say the evidence is overwhelming: DNA, surveillance footage, cell phone records, even a rifle allegedly fired from a nearby rooftop. The official explanation seems airtight, but here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Not everyone is convinced. Enter Jason Goodman, a controversial investigator who claims the mainstream account doesn't add up. In his words, the evidence points to something far more unsettling: that Charlie Kirk was not shot from the front at all, but from behind. It's a theory that instantly raises the stakes. If true, it wouldn't just be a minor detail. It would unravel the entire prosecution narrative and potentially point towards something far more complex than a lone gunman. Goodman insists that the rooftop sniper explanation is inconsistent with what's visible on video and what's known about ballistics. He argues that the wound pattern doesn't match the kind of devastation a high-powered rifle would typically cause. Instead, he suggests a low-velocity projectile entered from behind, a claim that, if ever proven, would flip the case upside down. Now, let's pause. Before you take this at face value, it's important to be clear. These are Goodman's interpretations, not confirmed facts. Prosecutors and official investigators stand by their version of events: that Robinson fired a high-powered rifle from a rooftop, and that ballistic evidence supports it. Court filings reviewed by outlets like PBS and Fox News reiterate this point. Still, Goodman's claim forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. If Kirk was shot from behind, then what does that mean for the official story? Was the rooftop rifle a red herring? Could investigators have missed something crucial? Or is this simply the kind of conspiracy theory that emerges after every high-profile tragedy? What makes this even more intriguing is Goodman's confidence. He presents his case not as speculation, but as irrefutable evidence. To his audience, it sounds less like a theory and more like a revelation. And that boldness is exactly why his version has gained traction online, drawing in viewers who already distrust the official narrative. As we peel back the layers, keep this in mind. Stories like this live in the tension between what we know, what we're told, and what might never be revealed. In this case, the first battle is over direction itself. Front or back, rifle or something else. And if the very direction of the fatal shot is in dispute, then maybe, just maybe, the truth about what really happened to Charlie Kirk is far stranger than anyone first imagined. When investigators first briefed the public, they described a chillingly straightforward scene: a high-powered rifle, allegedly fired by Tyler Robinson, delivering a lethal shot from distance. The weapon, they suggested, was more than capable of piercing through bone, muscle, and tissue with devastating force. But here's where Jason Goodman's alternative theory throws a wrench into that narrative. He argues that the wounds seen on Charlie Kirk don't match the kind of destruction you'd expect from a rifle like the .30-06 Springfield, one of the calibers rumored to be in play. Now let's break that down. According to ballistics experts, rounds fired from a rifle of that power typically create clean entry wounds, but much larger, ragged exit wounds, sometimes several times bigger than the entry point. At high velocity, such bullets can fragment, tearing through tissue and bone with catastrophic results. In fact, forensic textbooks often describe rifle exit wounds as explosive compared to pistol wounds. Goodman seizes on this point. In his analysis, he claims that the footage of Kirk immediately after the shot doesn't show the kind of massive blowout consistent with such a weapon. Instead, he suggests that what's visible looks far more controlled, a smaller, less destructive injury. His conclusion? The projectile must have been slower, smaller, and fired from much closer range, striking from behind rather than from a rooftop. It's a bold claim, but here's the complication. Ballistic wounds are not always predictable. Forensic scientists caution that the size of an exit wound can vary dramatically depending on several factors: the distance between shooter and victim, the angle of entry, whether the bullet hit bone, how much velocity was lost in flight. the type of ammunition used. In other words, while Goodman is right that many high-powered rounds create large exit wounds, exceptions are common. A bullet that strikes at an unusual angle, or one slowed by passing through an intermediate object, might produce an injury far smaller than expected. Without an autopsy report or official forensic testimony, any conclusion about wound size remains speculative. But that's exactly what keeps this theory alive. Goodman insists that prosecutors have ignored these discrepancies, and that if the shot had come from behind at close range, then Robinson's alleged rooftop perch may have been nothing more than a decoy. Imagine the implications. If the fatal shot didn't come from above, then who fired it? And why is the entire public narrative focused so heavily on a rooftop rifle? For supporters of Goodman's view, this isn't just about ballistics. It's about trust. If the most basic forensic detail, the direction of the bullet, is in question, then how much faith should we place in the rest of the evidence? The ballistics puzzle doesn't just raise doubt. It opens the door to an even deeper mystery, one that shifts our attention from the science of bullets to the shadows hiding inside the video footage itself. If the ballistic questions weren't enough to stir controversy, the video evidence takes this case into even murkier waters. From the very beginning, prosecutors leaned on surveillance and broadcast footage to support their narrative. A rooftop sniper, a distant shot, and a victim struck down in the chaos. But Jason Goodman and others skeptical of the official story argue that when you slow the video down, frame by frame, something doesn't quite line up. In Goodman's analysis, the moment Charlie Kirk collapses looks less like the aftermath of a high-powered rifle strike and more like what he calls a squib effect. For those unfamiliar, a squib is a small pyrotechnic device often used in movies to simulate gunshots. When triggered remotely, it can mimic the impact of a bullet, producing controlled bursts of blood or debris. At first, the idea might sound outrageous. Why would a political figure be involved in something resembling staged gunfire? Yet, Goodman insists that certain details, the angle of Kirk's fall, the apparent lack of visible entry spray, and the strangely muted reaction of those nearby, point to a pre-planned event, not a spontaneous sniper attack. Here's where things get sticky. While it's true that slowed-down footage can reveal unusual details, forensic video analysts warn that frame-by-frame interpretation is far from conclusive. Compression artifacts, poor resolution, and even lighting changes can distort what viewers think they're seeing. What looks like a staged squib to one person may appear perfectly consistent with a real gunshot to another. Still, the footage undeniably fuels speculation. Supporters of Goodman's view note that the supposed impact moment is oddly unclear, almost as if the camera cuts away just as it happens. Critics, however, argue that this is cherry-picking. Live event coverage rarely captures every angle, and missing frames aren't evidence of conspiracy. But the real flashpoint comes from what happens after the shot. Instead of immediate pandemonium, the crowd's reaction seems, at least some viewers, oddly delayed. Goodman seizes on this, claiming it's a kind of mistiming that occurs when multiple takes or stage cues are involved. Prosecutors, on the other hand, dismiss this as a psychological trick. People often freeze in shock before reacting, especially in moments of sudden violence. Whether coincidence or clue, the video has become the heart of the controversy. It's the kind of evidence that ordinary viewers can access, rewind, and debate endlessly online, giving the theory its viral fuel. And in an era where public trust in institutions is already shaky, footage that doesn't quite add up becomes a perfect breeding ground for doubt. So the question becomes, is this video the smoking gun Goodman claims it is, or just a Rorschach test for people predisposed to distrust the official story? One thing's for sure, when it comes to this case, the video isn't just evidence. It's a mirror reflecting back our deepest suspicions about what's real, what's staged, and what we may never fully know. And as we peel back this layer, the mystery doesn't end here, because beyond the grainy footage lies an even darker possibility. The idea of a staged assassination orchestrated for reasons far more complicated than a lone shooter on a rooftop. If the video raises eyebrows, then the staging theory is where suspicion turns into a storm. Jason Goodman and others who challenge the official narrative claim that Charlie Kirk's shooting wasn't just misreported, it was manufactured. According to this theory, what the world saw that day was not a sniper's bullet, but a carefully orchestrated piece of political theater. The argument goes like this. The use of a squib device explains a lack of a visible gunshot wound, the muted blood pattern, and Kirk's strangely precise fall. In Goodman's view, the sequence mirrors film industry techniques rather than battlefield ballistics. And once you start looking at it through that lens, he argues, the surrounding actions look less like chaos and more like choreography. Take, for instance, the men seen near Kirk in the moments after he collapses. Conspiracy-leaning commentators point to one figure allegedly removing an object from Kirk's clothing, possibly the so-called squib, and discreetly passing it to another man. Then, another person, supposedly holding a small device, slips away quickly. Goodman suggests this could have been the remote trigger for the stage blast. Now, let's pause here. When the dust settles in cases like this, we're usually left with answers, neat, tidy explanations to close a book. But in the case of Charlie Kirk's shooting, the deeper you look, the more unsettling the questions become. On paper, the prosecution says it's simple. A sniper fired a shot, Kirk was a target, and the investigation is ongoing. Case closed, right? But peel back even one layer, and the contradictions start to scream louder than the headlines. Why, for instance, does the ballistics evidence remain so murky? Experts still haven't released a clear trajectory report, leaving open the possibility that Kirk's wound didn't match the supposed rooftop angle. And if the fatal shot didn't come from above, then where did it come from? Then there's the video evidence. Grainy though it may be, it tells a story that refuses to sit comfortably inside the official version. Was that a squib? A remote trigger? Or are thousands of viewers simply seeing what they want to see in pixelated frames? Even professional analysts disagree. Some call it compelling. Others dismiss it as illusion. But perhaps the most haunting piece of this puzzle is the silence. Tyler Robinson's name hovers like a ghost over the narrative, mentioned in whispers, circled in rumors, yet never brought fully into the light. What did he see? Why has his account remained so thin, so incomplete? Was he pressured to stay quiet? Or was he simply a bystander caught in the storm of speculation? And beyond the individuals, there's a machinery of the story itself. Why has certain footage never been released? Why are transcripts delayed, redacted, or buried under procedural backlogs? These aren't minor details. They are the connective tissue of the truth. And when that tissue is missing, people begin to fill the gaps with theories, some wild, some plausible, all of them dangerous to ignore. Because here's the truth we can't escape. In high-profile cases, secrecy breeds suspicion. And suspicion, once it takes root, is almost impossible to kill. Whether this was a lone shooter, a staged assassination, or something in between, the longer the silence drags on, the more the world begins to suspect we're not being told everything. So here we are at the edge of the known and the unknown. Was Charlie Kirk the victim of a sniper's bullet, a staged event, or something darker still? We may never know for certain. But one thing is clear. Someone somewhere knows more than they're saying. And until that silence is broken, this case won't be remembered just for its tragedy. It will be remembered for its unanswered questions. Because in the end, the most dangerous weapon isn't a bullet or a squib or even a lie. It's the truth withheld.